All right, now let's look at what happens a little bit when you're using your muscles and using that energy up. So your muscles, even though you're not thinking about it, are always working. If you are laying on your bed right now, not moving a muscle, your muscles are still at least slightly flexed. Now, it doesn't mean that they're firm, like a fully flexed, but just a little bit. They call it muscle tone, that those muscles are just a little bit engaged so that if something happened and you need to engage them really quickly, they're already slightly pulling. They just need to pull a little bit more when you send that signal down. So that's muscle tone. Make sure you are aware of that. But there are some things that happen when you start to exercise. So let's look at exercise. And these are going to be a little bit, maybe more so one than the other, depending on the type of exercise that you're doing. But one of the effects of exercise is called hypertrophy. And that means, should be an H there. Hypertrophy. And what that means is that the muscle gets bigger. If you use that muscle a lot, it's going to get a little bigger. Now, the amount that it gets bigger probably depends on how frequently you exercise and how much. But it doesn't mean necessarily that if you work out, you're going to become massive. But there is a little bit of development and growth in that muscle. It's important to know, though, that hypertrophy doesn't change the number of muscle fibers or the type. We'll talk about that in another video, but just their size. So the muscle fibers you already have become a little bit more developed. Those myosins, those actins, the more you use them, the more they develop. They get a little stronger, a little bit maybe thicker, in order to be able to resist the weight or the speed that you're making them try to accomplish. So that's hypertrophy. The next one is the number of mitochondria, and this is probably even more so true for things like endurance exercise. But you have mitochondria in your cells. You've learned that all throughout science, at least high school science. And they're the things that do the cellular respiration that gives us the energy. Well, if you're constantly running or biking or swimming or something where your body's like, wow, I need to make energy faster. Like we're doing this a lot. We're playing sports or whatever it might be. I need to make energy quicker than I'm doing it right now. The number of mitochondria in your body will start to increase. And it may not be all of your body. Like if you are a runner or a cyclist, it probably is going to be more so in your legs. Maybe some increases other places too, but probably more so in the legs. If you are a swimmer, it's probably going to be the legs, but also the shoulders, and whatever muscles you're engaging will start to develop more mitochondria so that you can actually get energy. You can build that energy faster and take in more oxygen than you would be able to if you didn't have as many mitochondria. You're also going to increase your blood flow. So people who have poor circulation, if they exercise more, often that circulation will improve. Your body will actually develop new blood vessels to carry more blood to that growing muscle or to the areas of the body where it's needed. And as you have more blood flow, that increases the circulation to those areas in the body. The next one is increased glycogen storage. We haven't talked about glycogen yet, but it's stored glucose. So when your body stores glucose, you don't store sugar in your muscles. You store glucose turned into glycogen. And that's kind of like a medium-ish storage of energy where we can access it. Long-term would be like turning it into fat. That's a long-term storage. Glycogen is like a short to medium-term storage of that glucose energy. So you'll start to store more of that glycogen in your muscles. So your muscles themselves have a bigger supply of the fuel, of the energy, of the stuff that they need. And the last one is called, in your notes it says neural efficiency. And neural just means your neurons. Your body actually gets better coordinated at doing the things that you do repeatedly. So for example, if you've ever tried to do a plank, you may have noticed that your abdominal muscles, when you're trying to do the plank, may start to like pulse, and you're kind of like, you're shaking trying to hold that plank position. What's causing that is your brain trying to coordinate your muscles to smooth it out. But it's obviously not working very well, and so you're kind of getting that tremor in your ab muscles. If you were to do planks all the time, over time your brain is going to figure it out. It's going to say, hey, you know what? If I, rather than say all of the abs flex, all of the abs relax, all of the abs flex, all of the abs relax, and I get this weird shaking, if I kind of alternate and I make these muscles fire and then these ones fire, and while they're resting, these ones are firing, then I actually get a smoother contraction. You can do that plank without the shaking. And that's true of any exercise. If you do bicep curls, if you do squats, if you run, if you swim, most of the gains or the improvement that you have in the first few months of exercise like that, most of that comes from neural efficiency. Your muscles may not be getting bigger or stronger, but maybe your brain is getting better at controlling them and knowing how to activate them properly to get the best performance out of it. How to run without using a bunch of muscles you don't necessarily need. You become more efficient. And when you combine that with maybe the number of mitochondria, the stored glucose as glycogen, and that neural efficiency all together, you can see some pretty big development in any exercise you start doing, even if it's within the first couple of weeks. But you're probably not going to see in those first couple of weeks, even the first couple of months, you're not going to notice a big change in necessarily muscle size. That hypertrophy part, while it does happen, typically doesn't really start to kick in until about 2 to 3 months of consistent exercise, where the body starts to say, okay, if we're going to keep doing this, we're going to invest the energy. We want those muscles to get bigger. So those are some of the effects of exercise. Now on the opposite side, there's another word you need to know, and that's called atrophy. Atrophy is the opposite. If you don't use it, you lose it. So it doesn't matter how much you lift or how big you are or how fast or anything. If you take 2 weeks off and do nothing, you will start to lose some of these positive effects, because your body doesn't need to store a bunch of extra glycogen if you're not using it. You don't need those extra mitochondria if we're just sitting on the couch. Those blood vessels aren't necessary. And definitely that hypertrophy, we don't need big, thick, strong strands of myosin if I'm not using them. So atrophy is something that you notice in somebody who's not very active, either because of just laziness, or it might be because maybe some of you have experienced this. If you've ever had an injury, if you had a broken arm or a leg that was in a what's the word I'm thinking of? Like a splint or something to stabilize if you had a knee injury or something. If you don't use that limb for a while, you can't use it for a while because of an injury, you'll lose that strength. It will have atrophied. So by the time you can run again, or you can get back to the gym, you won't be at the same speed, you won't be at the same weight as what you were doing before, because you've lost some of that tone, that blood flow, those mitochondria, whatever. That's atrophy. It's that loss of strength because of disuse. And it usually starts after about 2 weeks. So if you miss a day at the gym, it's not a big deal. But if you miss 2 weeks plus at the gym, yeah, you're going to start to see a loss in your performance, in your ability to do this kind of stuff. Okay?